After gaining multiple pieces of audience feedback throughout the construction of my project work, the main thing that I've learned is that asking other people for their opinions on your work can give you an extra insight into what works best when designing a product. This definitely made me realise the relevance of Clark et al.'s theory of regular audience research being essential to creating a successful media product. One of the ways in which I conducted my audience feedback was by handing out a sheet of paper with my 5 best masthead designs on it and asking people in my class to put a tick next to their favourite ones so that I could gain insight into which masthead would be the most likely to draw in my target audience of young adults. Whilst I didn't end up using the masthead design that most people liked the most, as it didn't exactly fit the arty and simple house style that I was going for, I did keep in mind that people tended to be more drawn towards things that are visually interesting and unique while constructing my main and ancillary tasks, and tried to keep this in mind when putting together other elements of my designs. This was an effective method of audience feedback as it gave me some insight into what kind of designs people are most drawn to. However, at the same time, its pros are quite limited as it also didn't give me insight into exactly what people like about the masthead they chose. If I was to do it again but do it differently, I probably would have done it as a questionnaire and asked people what it was that they liked the most about the masthead they chose, as well as asking which masthead they liked the best, so that I could have a better understanding of what it was specifically that drew them into that specific design. This would have given me more qualitative data rather than just quantitative data. After I'd finished constructing my ancillary tasks, I created a questionnaire asking people what they liked and what they thought could be improved about each of my ancillary texts. This was somewhat useful to the improvement of my ancillary texts, and to my website more so than my billboard, because some of the feedback I got on what could be improved pointed out things that I could have done differently that I didn't really think of while I was initially constructing my ancillary texts, such as adding film posters next to the headlines of reviews on my film page, and trying to make my billboard more interesting by tilting some of the images and text. However, in some ways this was also of a limited usefulness purely because most of the feedback I got was very vague and didn't really give me any insight into specifically what could have been altered to make my designs better. In hindsight, this probably could have been avoided had I maybe have given people more options as to what elements needed improving and given a box to write what it is about those elements that could make them better. The main piece of audience feedback I carried out, and that arguably had the largest impact on my final product, was my initial audience research questionnaire. This provided me with both quantitative and qualitative data, which in turn gave me a much more detailed insight into who my target audience is and what kind of things they wanted to see from a regional listings magazine, so I could then tailor the content of the magazine to fit these results. For example, 3/4 of my potential audience is female, so I made the model on the front of my magazine a woman and represented her as an ideal self, which is a Carl Rogers theory, so that it appealed to a mostly female audience. Another example of how my audience research questionnaire influenced the content of my regional magazine was that the 3 cinemas that people said they visited the most are Cineworld, View, and the Odeon. So I provided film listings for each of these cinemas on the film page of my website. There weren't really any cons to this method of audience research unless you count how difficult it is to actually get people to sit and fill it in, as it provided me with a lot of information about my target audience that was specific and informative to me when deciding what kind of content to include in my magazine and on my website. Overall, I didn't carry out as much audience feedback as I probably should have, meaning that it didn't really have as much of an impact on my final products as it could have. This is especially true because the feedback I carried out wasn't very thorough and most of the feedback I got was vague and unhelpful. If I was to do my project again, I would definitely make an effort to remember to carry out more audience feedback and make sure that it's thorough and has as little potential for people to give vague responses as possible, because I had mostly my own perspective on my design, meaning that my perspective was very limited and I didn't really have much of anyone else's opinion.